Hello, everyone. Welcome back to UX Insight. I'm Lena.
And I'm Alex.
Last episode, we talked about AI moving from answering to acting. Today, we're taking that one step further. Because once AI starts acting, the real question is no longer just about capability. It becomes a question about humans, how we think, what we're comfortable with, and how much control we're willing to give up.
And I think a good starting point is this. When does AI stop feeling helpful and start feeling uncomfortable?
Right. For example, imagine you're at home talking to a friend, and your AI speaker suddenly says, "Would you like me to set a more romantic mood?" Lights dim. Music starts. Technically impressive. But the reaction isn't, "This is useful." It's, "Why is this system listening this closely?"
So the problem isn't intelligence, it's boundary.
And this boundary issue shows up in more subtle ways, too. I had this experience where I talked about something personal in one conversation. A few days later, in a completely different context, the AI brought that information back. Not explicitly, but clearly influenced by it.
So it connected context that you expected to be separate.
Exactly. And that's the key point. Users don't think of context as continuous data. We think in situations, so when those boundaries blur, it feels wrong.
And this becomes even more sensitive with emotion.
Yes. For example, AI often responds with consistent agreement. It validates everything. At first, it feels supportive, but over time, it becomes uncomfortable because it removes any form of balance.
And in some cases, that can actually amplify emotions instead of stabilizing them.
Exactly. But what's more important is that this doesn't stop at conversation. It leads to action.
Right.
If AI understands your stress, it suggests changes. If it suggests changes, it can eventually execute them. And that's the transition point. At that moment, the problem changes. This is no longer about emotional discomfort. It becomes about authority.
Who gets to decide?
Exactly. And this is already happening. With systems like Clawbot, AI can book reservations, manage schedules, and even make payments.
So it's not just assisting anymore, it's acting on behalf of the user.
Yes, and once AI starts acting, it doesn't just support decisions, it shapes them.
If AI is gaining authority,
The next question is inevitable. Who controls that authority?
and I think this is where most discussions oversimplify things. People often say users don't trust AI, but that's not entirely accurate.
Right. Because even with something like Clawbot, some users are completely fine letting it handle everything, including payments.
And others would never allow that.
Exactly. So the difference isn't just trust, it's preference.
Yeah, this connects to two important ideas. First, locus of control. Some people want to remain in control of decisions, others are comfortable delegating, and second, delegation spectrum. How much responsibility someone is willing to hand over,
And those are fundamentally human differences.
which means there is no single correct level of automation.
Right. So designing AI with a fixed level of autonomy doesn't work.
Then the question becomes, how do we design systems that adapt to these differences? I think this is where UX needs to evolve, from interaction design to permission design.
Define that more concretely.
Let me structure this, because this is where we can actually design something practical.
First, we need a layered model. Let's call it a permission stack.
At the first level, visibility. The system must clearly communicate what it can do. For example, this AI can send emails. This AI can make purchases. If users don't know the capability, any action feels unexpected.
So transparency is the baseline.
Exactly. Second, control. Users must be able to intervene at any point. Stop, edit, or cancel. Without that, automation feels like loss of agency.
So even automation needs interruptibility.
Right. Third, decision level. Not all actions should be treated the same. Some should be suggestions. Some require confirmation. Some can be fully automated.
So we're designing levels of autonomy.
And fourth, learning. The system adapts based on behavior. If a user consistently approves something, automation can increase. If not, it should remain conservative.
So the system learns not just what I want, but how much control you want to give.
Now, this connects to another important model: risk. We can categorize actions into levels. Low-risk actions like turning on lights. These can be automated.
Because the consequence is minimal.
Exactly. Medium-risk actions like sending emails. These should require confirmation.
Because there's potential impact.
Right. High-risk actions like payments or emergency calls. These should always require explicit approval, sometimes even multiple confirmations.
So the higher the risk, the stronger the control layer.
Exactly. And there's one more critical separation:
Which is?
communication and execution. AI can communicate like a human. Natural, empathetic, conversational, but execution must follow strict rules.
So tone is flexible, but action is controlled.
Exactly. Talk like a human. Act like a system. And I think this is the key shift. We're no longer just designing interaction, we're designing permission.
So today we talked about something deeper than UX patterns. We talked about human behavior.
How people think about control, authority, and decision-making.
And why designing AI now requires understanding those differences.
Because as AI becomes more capable,
It also becomes more powerful.
and that leads to one final question.
What happens when AI has access to everything?
That's what we'll explore in the next episode. Privacy, surveillance, and the limits of AI.
If you're interested in how AI is reshaping UX, make sure to subscribe to UX Insight.
And we'll see you next time.